advantage of it. Roman hook. Headed. Batted in! BYU scores!
Let's get it. Let's get it. Rockin' Royal. Rockin' Navy. Know y'all with me. Let's get it, baby. Rockin' Royal. Rockin' Navy. Know you with me. Let's get it, baby. Boys just came back from their mission. We going crazy.
Welcome back to another edition of the KSL.com Rockin' Royal Soccer Show. I'm Sean Walker, your beat writer for KSL.com, bringing you all things in the world of footy for now. And we have officially reached the conference play portion of the schedule of this podcast. I'm not really sure who's in our podcast conference, but I can assure you one thing. My co-host, former BYU soccer player and current ESPN Plus commentator, Carla Swensen-Haslam, is the three-time defending podcast conference champion, and I'm happy to have her back on the show. Carla, thanks again for joining me so much.
I really appreciate, Sean, how every single podcast episode there is a brand new intro. And I never know what to expect, if it's going to be soccer related or law related, or I mean, the sky is the limit of the different introductions that you have come up with. So kudos to you for being very creative with those intros. As always, I'm very grateful to be here and be able to talk all things soccer, all things football.
I'm just trying to add to your Wikipedia page. That's all, really. Like, do you have a Wikipedia page yet?
No,
I don't know if
and
you
we're
do.
going to leave it that way.
I might have to start one. Or
No,
maybe I'll get your husband to start one. He's actually
very,
a lot better
very
at that stuff than me.
unnecessary. Especially if Wikipedia is going to be asking people for donations to look at that kind of stuff. So,
Well, yeah, that too. Maybe we can make you a Wikipedia page and we'll just put it behind the paywall.
again, not a great business plan for Wikipedia.
Yeah, probably not ideal. Probably less than ideal. Kind of like much of the internet. You give something away for free, it's hard to charge for it later. But we won't get into that. Enough of my discussions about media and media machinations and where we should be as a media entity, because this podcast, at least for right now, it's free. There is no paywall. So hit that download, hit that like, hit that subscribe button, 5-star reviews if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it. If you leave us a 5-star review, I'm going to make a promise right here, Carla, and hold me to this. If you make a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, I will read it on air in its entirety.
All right.
If I need to censor some stuff for like FCC regulations, leave me that option to do so. But I will read every 5-star review we get on Apple Podcasts on air. So go ahead, leave one over there. You can criticize me. You can say whatever you want about me. You know, the funny hat, the ugly head, whatever. Try not to criticize Carla, please. She's very uncriticizable. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word. It is now. But yeah, we're gonna start reading those. So if you want to go leave us a 5-star review over on Apple Podcast, comment on Spotify, subscribe on the YouTube channel right now at Rockin' Royal Pod. You can get all of this fresh-faced and in video format as well, which is where BYU women's soccer played this past week. Not necessarily live for those of us stuck in Provo, Utah. The Cougs traveled to Sun Devil Soccer Stadium in Tempe, Arizona to open Big 12 play this past Thursday night. And the unbeaten run is over, Carla Swensen-Haslam. 2-1 was the final result for the Sun Devils. ASU stays unbeaten on the year. BYU, well, they weren't unbeaten anyways, falls to 5-2-1 on the season. Not an ideal way to open Big 12 play, I'm not going to lie. But I think there were some good things to take away from this one for a BYU side that was down. They're starting to center backs. That's probably the most important thing that we should mention. They found a little bit of fight, a little bit of grit. Presley Freeman scored another just incredible. All she does is score bangers. Whenever Presley scores, she scores bangers. This was another pretty good banger, I think. But what were just kind of some of your overall thoughts or overall takeaways from this one, Carla?
Yeah, I think this was a game that BYU thought and BYU fans thought that they were going to win. I didn't think BYU would go undefeated in conference play, even with TCU and Texas Tech not being in their conference. I knew that they would probably give up one or two, and maybe just early on, it's just one of these early on in the season. I'm actually not too worried about it. So my thoughts on this game was that BYU had some really good looks. They had some good shots on goal. They had some good defensive plays. It ultimately just came down to the Sun Devils like putting it away. They had those two good looks and they put it away and they were able to score more than BYU. So I don't think that BYU played poorly in this game. I think, ASU just did a great job of finishing their shots. They had a lot of good offensive attack. And so you give the Sun Devils credit for just having a good game. And you'd mentioned this is a team that like wins a lot. It's not new for ASU to win on their home field and to know how to close out those games. They got up 2 goals and they were able to close out. And so it's a bummer for BYU, but this isn't something that like worries me. This isn't something that has me panicked for the rest of BYU season. You're going to drop games sometimes. Even if you're the favorite, you're going to drop games sometimes. And I don't think this in any way is going to harm or hurt BYU. Now they've got to win some games for sure. If we're talking about standings and playoff wise, but I think this is just one of those, bad luck games where the other team's able to put away. And again, ASU played well, so you give them credit for that. And I think BYU can learn from this and just move on to the next one. But it's not something that worries or panics me too much.
16 shots for Arizona State to 15 for the Cougs. ASU held BYU to just 4 shots on target, and that's maybe the thing that concerns me as much as a little bit of a sudden lack of depth at the center back position. We should give credit to ASU. Goal and an assist by Addison Baltodano, including the eventual game winner just after the 49-minute mark. Cameron Valladares also had a goal and then a second assist, if you will, on that eventual game winner. Presley Freeman scores in the 85th off of an assist from Micah Cromanhook. So it's good to see them get involved in the attack. Peyton Collins comes away with 5 saves in this one. Pauline Nellis, goalkeeper for ASU, only had to make 2 saves. And that, I think, is what's maybe a little bit disappointing. Is this BYU team, they got into the attack enough. The possession wasn't terribly uneven or terribly lopsided, but only putting 4 shots on frame, that's not going to give you a whole lot of chances, especially when you're talking about coming back from pretty early on in or midway through the first half, or trying to make a run on the road. You need to score on the road. You need to put yourself in positions to score on the road. No one player had more than 1 shot on target. That includes Ellie Walbrick, just 1. Micah Cromanhook had 1. Presley Freeman's obviously goal counted, and then Emma Hammerlin off the bench as well. So we could talk about the center back situation if you want, Carla, but I'm a little bit maybe more concerned with the fact that ASU was pretty well. They didn't totally bottle up BYU's attack, but they kept them a little bit off balance, kept them from maybe being as clinical as they would like. We've seen a little bit of that in the past. Is this a trend to worry about, or do you have trust in Jen Rockwood to kind of fix that end of the offense?
Yeah, again, it's not something that worries me, but it is something that has to be addressed. So, and you're right, that's probably been, if you had to pick what's BYU's biggest weakness at this point, it's high volume of shots. It's not even not having talent in the attack because they have talent. It's just getting a volume.
Plenty of it.
Yeah, it's just getting like a high volume of shots. We saw the same issue against Arkansas, which was the other game that BYU dropped this season in non-conference play. It's just getting a higher volume of opportunities. And so when BYU has the ball and they get those looks, they actually look really good. They just have to increase that. And that happens from your midfield line better connecting with your forwards so that your forwards have a higher volume of shots. And it has to do with your forwards making runs so that when they get the ball, they don't have 2 and 3 players on them, because that's also going to diminish statistically the number of shots that you get. And so you're right. It is something that has to be addressed. It's something that BYU does well in some games. And then others, the volume just dwindles. And so it's something that they can do. They can get a high volume of shots on goal. They just have to get more consistent at it. Again, it's really not something that worries me too much, but as you get farther on in the season, you don't want to drop any more games. And you're right, on the road is when you need to be really trying to score goals, especially if you find yourself down. And so it is something that I think the team's going to have to figure out pretty quickly is how do we just get more shots off? How do we get into the box more? That was, I think, one of the difficulties too that BYU had against ASU is they weren't getting into the box. They were getting a lot of shots from outside of the
Yeah.
18, but they
The
weren't
high
getting inside
percentage
the
shots,
box a
if you
lot.
will.
Yeah, they weren't getting inside the box. And so all just changes that I think the team's going to have to make. Now, the advantage they're having is that they get to come back to South Field, and they always statistically have higher production rates when they're at South Field. So maybe they can use, these next two games at home as a way to get that attack back rolling and get back on that momentum.
100%. We mentioned it a little bit before. We'll touch on it right here. Kate Denny and Matt and Summers Oviatt both started in center of defense. Matten's no stranger necessarily to that center back position, but she hasn't played there this year just because of Avery Frishenecht and Izzy Stratton have been so good. Both of them were out this game. Kate Denny actually went, the true freshman, kind of adjusting to a center back role, actually went the full 90. I thought she looked good enough. That first goal, I won't totally say it was against the run of play because ASU had some decent chances, but I think for all intents and purposes, a lot of it was against the run of play. I don't know if I fully blame that the defense or that central defense in particular for that first goal. But overall, BYU's lack of depth at the center back position, I think, is another thing that that eventually will need to be addressed, especially depending on what the long or medium term prognosis is to both Izzy Stratton and Avery Frishenecht. We'll get a little bit more information on that as we get closer to that home opener. I think this Wednesday night, it's creeping up on us real quick. You'll be there. I think I'll be there. I should be there. But if you're not at Southfield, you can join Carla Swensen-Haslam on that ESPN Plus broadcast as BYU welcomes former Big 12 standout. I don't know if we can necessarily say that this year. They've been a little bit more up and down. West Virginia, 7 p.m. Mountain Time is the kickoff, like I mentioned before, live on ESPN Plus or from Southfield for those who know or those who are in the know. This is a West Virginia, Carla, that historically has been very good, especially since joining the Big 12. For a little while, they had a little bit of a mini pipeline to the Canadian national team with names like Kadisha Buchanan and so forth. They literally had like 3 or 4 national teamers come through there within like a 5 or 6 year span, which I think was pretty cool. I didn't realize that Toronto to Morgantown was such a big, such an easy connection, but apparently it is, I guess. Not necessarily the case. West Virginia comes in with a 5-2-1 record, 0-1 in Big 12. They opened up conference play with a scoreless tie in Orlando to UCF. So this is maybe kind of like BYU a little bit against Arizona State, a team that has struggled in the attack, struggled against kind of some of their power conference opponents, I guess we'll call it. They haven't beaten a power conference team yet. Only a couple of opportunities. We mentioned that draw against UCF, and then losses to then number 15 Virginia and number 14 Penn State on the road as well. What do you remember? What do you know about West Virginia? And maybe give us a little bit of a primer. What should fans expect this Wednesday night at Southfield?
Yeah, it's one of those things that in looking at West Virginia, I haven't been too impressed yet. Now, I'm still now holding off that they'll have some big games because they are a team that knows how to win in the past. You had mentioned that they used to be very much like a legacy team and always performed very well. So I'm not counting them out just yet, but you're right. They have lacked a bit in their offensive power this season and have given up quite a few goals, especially to talented teams. If I had to predict, I would think it would be a BYU win on Wednesday night, especially considering that they're going to have to travel, make the long, airplane ride to Southfield, and then to play against a BYU team that I think is going to be very upset following their most recent loss to ASU. But that being said, you can't put anything past them. Their coaching staff's very bright. And we've seen coaches come into Southfield and make tactical changes at halftime that really change, what the game looks like. And so I would tell the fans to be prepared for that. I think BYU is going to come out just full of energy and momentum in the first 45, and then we're going to see tactical changes at halftime that may change the last 45. The question will be, can BYU score early and often so that doesn't matter? And I know that's one of Coach Rockwood's, mantras and goals is to be able to score early in a game so you can start to put games away early on. And I think that'll be the key to this West Virginia game. I think if BYU can score early, if even multiple times, but if they can score early, I think they win this game. If they leave West Virginia in it for a long time, then anything can happen. I can see this West Virginia team getting a late goal, and winning it 1-0. So that I think is going to be the biggest question is, can BYU score in the first half and preferably a few more times?
Yeah, and you mentioned it a little bit. Shout out to Nikki Isle-Brown, the Jen Rockwood of West Virginia, if you will, been there for 30 years. She's a very veteran, very established coach, had a little bit of a pipeline going on for a while, took this West Virginia team to the national championship match. I think that wasn't that long ago. Was it like 6 years ago?
Yeah.
I want to say. Maybe a little bit more. 2016. Boy, we're getting old. We are getting old, Carla. But Nikki's a very good coach. But I only bring that up to say Nikki's a very good coach. She's produced a ton of great players, a ton of great teams, I think, at West Virginia. And they're going to be up against it coming in on the road. This is an opportunity, I think, for BYU to kind of right the ship some from that road loss to Arizona State. But I don't think it's necessarily a given. This is maybe one of their more difficult home games remaining on the schedule, that in the Kansas game, if you will, in a couple of weeks, I think for sure. So I don't think this is given in any way whatsoever, but maybe not the West Virginia teams that we're necessarily used to seeing all of the time. I want to be shocked if they kind of come in and maybe try to look to get out on the counter, maybe steal a point or a smash and grab. Or that kind of thing. I think BYU needs to be ready for that. Absolutely. But this could be an opportunity for BYU to get right in a lot of ways as well, for sure. Carla, anything else stand out about this BYU team as they now turn their attention fully to Big 12 play, about West Virginia, about kind of the road ahead that you want to touch on before we get out of here?
No, I think you highlighted it well in talking about how the back line will also be a question, just with injuries, with Avery Frischneck being gone, and then we don't know yet on Izzy Stratton how long she will be out. That's another question because you want to have that back line to be solid. And I think Summers, Ovia, and Denny are good replacements for that, but that's a question that will remain. You want to be able to be super solid on that back line. And so I think West Virginia and then Cincinnati on Saturday will be good indicators of how prepared this defensive line is for BYU.
Yeah, 100%. We'll check some more details, do some of our due diligence. As always, you can tune into ESPN Plus with Carla Swensen-Haslam there on the pregame. I'm sure she'll have fully updated info for you by then. KSL.com if you want some guy on the internet as well. A guy who likes to make a lot of Douglas Adams references. You mentioned, let's bring it right back around. I always seem to have something a little bit different for the intro. The outro, Carla, it's always the same. So if you like the podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, Apple Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review. We will read every single one of them on this podcast now. Leave us a comment on Spotify. If you're listening over there, we'd love to hear it. Like and subscribe on YouTube at Rock and Royal Pod. And as always, Cougar Nation, so long and thanks for all.
We granting kids wishes like that boy Cosmo. Got you. They steady hating on us, but we who they watch though. The Pac-12 mad, but we still on top, bro. Jaren Holder, Cody X, that's a cool connect.
Yeah, my team is kinda old, but it's cool we vets.
I'm hitting too hard, ow, I hurt my neck.
Hey, Leak, you good, bro? I'm about to hit up Brett.
Man, them Utah State Aggies, man, they just some pets.
Catch us out in Vegas, you could place your bet.
Coach G up on our side, so we never press.
Praying meetings every day, so we never stress.
Rockin' Royal, rockin' Navy. Know you with me, let's get it, baby. Rockin' Royal.